Welcome to Writing Review of Literature. In the last session, we had attempted to understand how to read literature to get ready for writing. So let's see whether we are ready to write now. I'm sure that you have been able to go through these steps. Have you identified the suitable papers that are necessary for your subject? Have you visualized them? Have you been able to connect it to your research statements, to your research questions? Could you identify them in the new literature that you were reading? Were you able to do this tabular way of writing, making notes, and at one glance you are now able to look at what you have read? Have you been able to organize themes now? Did you make notes on these themes? Have you become familiar with the content of the paper that you are reading? You know that that paper has got this kind of a content. Have you organized yourself well to start writing? If you have done all these stages, come, let's start writing. So the first thing is you must know what is this job of a reviewer. Now, a reviewer's job is to evaluate the writing of others. Remember, that is the task you have taken up to do in review of literature. You are reviewing the writings of others. So you have to be well equipped to evaluate. So for that, you need to keep your reading up to date. The literature that you read is up to date. You must be able to provide context and relevance to what you are reading that you have already completed. Now, you know that when you read well, you must be feeling by now, if your reading is good, you must be feeling much more confident than what you were feeling earlier, because now you know your subject well. So once you have made your research reading well, you will feel stronger about it. You will also become more precise and also become very systematic about the subject in thinking. So your thinking ability itself changes. You are now able to think in a much more precise manner, in a much more organized manner, in a much more systematic manner. So now you can present your ideas, insights, everything in a much more organized manner. It will also lead you to develop your methodology. I'm sure that by now you have also read about methodology and you're getting some ideas in your mind how to write your methodology unit. So once you are organized at this stage, you save a lot of time for things that are much more important later. These are things that can be done, just little bit of organizing, little bit of planning, you can do this work better. Now, so the first thing that you do is you have already done developing headings and subheadings. Use these headings and subheadings and start getting the points that you have in theme wise. Put the ideas in one. Since it is on you're using computers, it is much easier. If you have written, say, environmental destruction and transport development, if you are connecting on those 2 points, so transport and development, you can see construction for road, variety of themes might emerge from that. So you connect your ideas, put them into headings, and put the subheadings for that. So once you're ready with that, with all your ideas and papers and your notes, everything is ready, find a quiet place to write. Writing requires a lot of focus, requires a lot of concentration, and it requires you to sit in a place to do this work for quite a long number of hours. So you find an undisturbed place for yourself to do this and plan it. So keep your resources ready with you. So start writing major themes, headings based on the subject issues that you have read or the patterns that you have found in those papers. You can start thinking about writing them and use your headings to save the writing. So whatever your notes that you have, now you can use headings and put them into different heads or themes. So that will make it easier for you to start writing. You also, when you're doing this job, you can also observe the differences that are there between pieces of writing. What are the similarities that are there between the pieces of writing? You can also see that how do you connect these differences and similarities to form another set of writing. So ideas that are similar, you can categorize them together. Ideas of a different kind, you can categorize it together. That is how you will create a pattern, a heading that you want to write. Now, having organized your ideas, you now have to move from general to specific. Give a broad idea, introduction, good introduction, because an introduction gets the reader interested in your writing. So give a good introduction, give a background of the literature that you are proposing to study in this particular chapter, and what have been the progress made in that literature, and see whether there are methodological issues that you want to highlight. Now, once you have reached it, then take it, keep it simple. There is no need to get into complicated writing styles with words that people don't understand and so on. So keep it simple. The reader must be able to understand your review of literature. The jargon, the technical words can be used in the chapters that are related to your main theme. As of now, start writing in simple languages. You can substitute words later when you find that you have understood a word much better than what you do now. Now, you also need to learn to start writing by synthesizing ideas. There are so many ideas you have in mind. When you start writing, what happens is the mental processes that you're focusing on that idea, not just reading. So, this focusing on the idea will allow you to synthesize your thinking. You will find there are controversial issues there in that writing. When you find controversial issues, raise a question. That is where you will be able to get your research gaps. Then what are the main limitations of that paper, and then start thinking critically about that paper, also creatively, because you can connect it to your own research work. And then when you create new ideas, you are going deeper into the subject that you are doing. So that is where the synthesis of ideas will happen. First attempt. Well, writing is a long journey, and people wait for that perfect form of writing in the first time. It never happens unless a person is a very prolific writer. So, for a research scholar, I believe that start. It will require at least 6 to 8 months, not less than that, to do a good review of literature. It takes much more than that, and much more, because when people don't know how to review, they take a much longer time and they struggle with that one chapter. And finally, it's a kind of a work that they do. Now, simply start like this. Write a simple summary of the piece of work. Now, what I suggest here is take any landmark article. For example, when I started my own research, I was given this article by uh, George Sacropoulos on returns to education across countries. It was a difficult paper, but I had to write the summary. So I wrote that summary. It took me quite some time to write the summary, and after the writing the summary, then what is there? You have just summarized it. Well, you have summarized it. But now, when you read it again, you become critical about what has been written. You will start becoming analytical about what you have written, and then you will want to rewrite that particular article. So, start making notes. Now, start making a summary. After making a summary, think of being critical, think of being analytical, think of being creative. So when you write articles, what you're doing is actually you demonstrate your knowledge about the subject, the command over the language, command over the subject that you are doing. And it will also help you to develop your writing and editing skills, which is a lifelong skill you will read as long as you are in this field of research or using your research knowledge. So write a draft summary of any one of the core paper, as I just told you. Read it, reread it, identify research issues in that, identify your style of writing, compare it with another author, and see how yours is different from that. You may like the style that you're writing, or you may want to upgrade the style in which you have written. Go ahead. You have the freedom to do that. But concentrated effort is needed in writing. Editing editing the written text periodically is a part of writing work. So you will find yourself editing almost every other day you are editing some work or the other. So writing and editing go together, and that must happen together. So perfection is not the purpose of doing this work now. This purpose here is to learn to start writing research. So you write it, let it get in that written format. So once you get in the written format, you can edit it, correct it, polish it. All that work can be done later, and many times over you will be doing that. So that is okay. And periodically you can edit it, because when you edit it, you might have found some newer meaning to what you have written earlier. You may find this first article written in such a way it is too simple, too plain. Now that you have got more ideas, you may want to connect those ideas and make it an improved write-up that you are talking about. And that is how it goes on. And remember, writing is often chaotic at this stage. There is no harm. Let it be the way it is. Let it be the way you have written it. Just keep writing. Editing and polishing it and upgrading the quality of your writing will happen as you go along the research process. So also, one thing that you can do is, in case you come upon some good quotable quotes, you can use it at the beginning of the chapter to introduce the chapter, or you may want to end the chapter. These are the two places it could be good. Somewhere in between you may use a quote, but too many quotes inside the text is not very advisable. And the other important thing is transition from one paragraph to the other, from one paragraph to the other, one section to the other, one chapter to the other. Now these are very important in research writing. You cannot abruptly stop an idea and start a new idea. We need to move from one idea to the other. So you could find words and phrases that are used, connecting words and phrases that are used. They are very important. You start looking at these words when you are reading articles. You will find these words, how they have connected, how the other early writers have connected paragraphs to the next paragraphs, how the next section to the earlier section, the next unit to the other. So this is usually done, but this will come to you once you read it carefully. Once you observe these things, you will start understanding that. That's why I just brought it to your notice. There are some phrases, catchphrases, which I just remembered these kind of words here. These are the recent developments in the study, or the previous studies indicate to something, or among the most widely used method. This method is gives this particular kind of an output. Or when we compare this study to that study, or you can say, however, that study does not find this, or you can say, in contrast to that study, how this study is. Or there are raging debates on this issue, and the debates have not been settled. Or you can say, regardless of the fact what it is true that despite several opposition to an idea or opposition to this particular theory, the theory still holds good. So these kind of words that you will have to keep discovering, keep a note of all of them. So that will help you to also connect these paragraphs. So transiting, you would write it like this. However, the next paragraph would highlight this particular issue further. So once you move that to the next one, you will have connected one paragraph to the other paragraph. Connect it sensibly, coherently, and paragraph should not be disjointed. Ideas should not be jointed. Otherwise, it will look like it has been copied from somewhere. So let these ideas move from one set of ideas to another. Even the last page of your review chapter should indicate to the first introduction. That means all your units that you have written in the review chapter are all connected to each other, and that makes good reading for the reader, and the reader would like to read it. And write the paragraphs in such a way that you don't have too long paragraphs, rather small paragraphs. You can decide how many sentences you want in a paragraph. Try and find out how many are usually used in good articles, how many paragraphs are used, and how many sentences are used. At the same time, I remember during my own research, I had given my review to a professor to read and help me to know whether I was on the right track in terms of writing. This was done very early in my writing, and she had given me a very important tip. She said, in a paragraph, have only this many, some 15 or something sentences, but she gave me another important tip. In a sentence, house only one or two ideas. Don't house too many ideas in one sentence, because the reader will get distracted, the reader cannot understand it. So that is something that I still use, have one or two ideas only in one sentence. Now I have used numbers here. You can see that suddenly I have moved from bullets to numbers. Let me also tell you that bullets are not used in research. Normally we don't use. It is more to learn to describe something. So headings, description, points, these are the ways good research is written. So when you look at formatting, I'm using formatting as a chapter. You can use, when you're writing, you will write review of literature as a chapter. So in this one chapter one, what am I using? How am I using the points? So 1.1, I am writing about the university regulations that are prescribed in terms of the correct format. So that is the first one that I'm talking about. 1.2, I'm also teaching you how to number. So 1.2, you need to be careful about the font, the size of the font, the spacing in the paragraph, the margins, then the alignment, the footnotes, all of this will be under 1.2 unit. Whatever your category theme will be, you can have 1.2. Then 1.3 on chapters and charts and diagrams and labels and tables and formulae. All of these you need to find out how they are how tables are numbered in different chapters. Where is it tables, chapter title, and title is given on the top or the bottom. How would you like to present your table or charts and so on? Then how are you going to number your subtopics? Then I will show it in the next page, how to number subtopics. Then how to use a correct reference style, APA or MLA style. What is it that the university wants you to do? If there are no restrictions on that, then you can learn all the different reference style, and accordingly you can choose the one that is convenient to you. But then when you learn to do these little things, you will find that you are far more organized in writing than just writing in pages of different kinds and then collecting it together, getting confused. We can do research in a much more organized work now than without being organized. So let's learn to be more organized. Of course, language is an important part of research work, and therefore we need to brush up our language skills. Most of the international articles that you're going to get are all in English, and as I told you before, there is no harm in spending some time in learning English over. Now, when I say English, I'm talking about the English language skills, which would be related to your vocabulary that you use. You need to use appropriate vocabulary that is related to your subject. It is subject specific, and we always have formal writing. So you can also use synonyms, because after some time the same words get used in the research. Therefore, when you use synonyms, you'll find it in your word itself. You'll find that synonyms are there. Use an appropriate synonym according to what you want. Then you also think about the tense that you need to use in your English language. There's no harm in taking out a grammar book or looking into some books on teaching or sites on grammar and get back to reading grammar. So simple past, we observed, we identify, so when you're writing it in that simple past, that is one style of writing. You can go to the present perfect tense. We have observed, that's another way to write in the present perfect tense. Why do we use both? It gets boring with one style, so you can mix these two styles throughout your research, wherever appropriately, however coherently you can use it. So you also can understand how to use a person, first person and third person. The second person is not used because we don't use you in the research work at all. We could use some writings, you may find I. We is quite well accepted in many writings, because the researcher and the scholar and the research supervisor together constitute the we, that we can be done. Or we can use a researcher. Somewhere you can use the we found that. Somewhere you can the researcher found that. So you can intersperse them depending upon the context that you're using. And the third person, he, she, it, and they can be used when we are talking usually about data. When we get that, it can be found, it can be argued, it is found. So these kind of languages, you just be aware of these kind of words that you need to use. Now you also need to learn to use voice. I missed out something. Now here you are using sub-units of the same thing. So chapter 2 is language skills. In chapter 2, I am using 2.1 is vocabulary, 2.2 is tense. But in tense, I have got simple past and present. So what I wrote is 2.2.01, 2.2.02. So they both relate to the same idea of tense. So when you are writing thematically, you can use this kind of categorization of numbering, so that they all fall into blocks. Each unit will become a block by the numbers that you can see. So 2 means chapter 2, 3.2 means third chapter, 4 means fourth chapter, so on. All these things affect the readability of text. Voice also, you can be careful about the voice. You can use past form of the verb either in active or passive voice. For when you say it was observed, the respondents were asked to, or an active voice, the researcher observed. So active and passive voice we have studied at school and college, we must have forgotten all of that. It has become a part of our language, but when it comes to writing, you need to be careful. So speak, it doesn't worry, but when you have to write, be careful about these things. And you can use simple past tense and present tense is generally used. And future tense, we use it only when we are talking about policy suggestions, something that will happen in the future. So this style of mixing active and passive form reduces monotony for the reader. That is one thing that I have understood. Otherwise, it is the researcher observed that, the researcher did that. So you can, so it was observed. Sometimes the researcher observed. So we can mix up and write. That always gives that little bit of freedom to read. Then you must, but for understanding all of this, that good reading is what is necessary. Now, the other important thing is get your written text read by somebody who is good with English and does not know your subject. So that person, when he or she reads it, what happens is he will have so many questions to ask you, things that he has not understood, or he makes comments on your language, whatever. So get that feedback from that person who was generous enough to read your writing. Make those take those feedback very seriously, and check it out whether you can make those corrections, or another person, you can give it to two or three people. I have always suggested students, give it to somebody else to read your article before you bring it to me. You get them reading it, correct those suggestions that they have given, then come back to me, because otherwise we waste a lot of time in trying to help you to read good write good literature. That can be avoided. So reading and editing, of course, is a continuous process. It never stops till the end of your research thesis submission. You will have editing work done, and your career, you will always use editing work. So some of the common mistakes that we make while we write is, first of all, we don't organize ourselves well. And when we don't organize ourselves well, our review is also not organized well, and then the units are not logically related to each other. We can avoid that. It just needs a little more planning, a little more time, a little more effort. Your research review will come out as a good chapter. It'll give you a lot of insight for the chapters that will come back to you later. And the author could not arrive at the research issues, because the research issues are something, the articles are something else. There's no point in doing that. I have seen that happen so many times. Just because the title is there, they copy that and they bring it. Instead of that, the research theme, the research issue that you have must be the only articles that you should review. There's no point in reviewing articles which don't relate to your research questions, to your research statement. And then otherwise you have a haphazard, disjointed writing, which is also lacking coherence. We can't make out what the writer is trying to do. Your writing should be as lucid as possible, as clear as possible, as simple as possible, so that a person who wants to learn something from your work should be able to read your work. And sometimes citations are just copied, authors are just copied, the citations are not given. There is a style of writing citations. See how the writing, either it is the name and the year, or the names together at the end, or more than two writers. How are more than two writers, three writers, et al. Word is used, how ibid is used. These are things that you will pick up on your own when you're reading. That's why I did not highlight it here. Then Ultimately, what you should do is your reference section should be complete and in perfect order from day one. If you do not do that, you will find out which book did I read, which article did I read, from where did I borrow that, and finally you say, okay, this article I don't have any author or a year, so let me delete that. It must have been a very precious article. So day one, you start writing. Make sure that you have cited it correctly. Your bibliography is entered into Mendeley, and then you are safe with your bibliography till the end. So these are some of these ideas that I have about writing a review, and I hope that if you are more organized like this, you should be saving a lot of time. In fact, my this purpose of doing this lesson, these ideas that I have shared with you, comes from my own experience as while doing my PhD, where I ran through all of these struggles. And later, when I started teaching this research, I decided that I do this to my students much earlier, so that they can avoid wastage of time, getting stressed and doing a shoddy work, because at the end they don't know what to do. Somehow they catch up together and put it. So I'm sure that you will be more organized. Since your reading is good, now, writing should not be a problem. You will be able to do a good job of writing. And don't expect perfect writing as of now. It will happen as you go along. You will keep polishing, you will keep adding, you will find out ideas from what you have written. Nothing to worry about the first writing that you have done. Let it be as it is. You move on, you will get it corrected. Thank you very much. So, I hope these lessons have been useful to you. Do write your comment. Let me know about how you're faring with these sessions, and also share it with your other research friends and teachers. I know how difficult it is to manage all of this. So organizing and planning is the only way out to do good research and complete it on time, rather than hanging on with the research for a long number of years. All the best, and thank you.